Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of InstacarHK. Today we are at a secret garage in Singapore where it houses a very cool JDM collection. Now the owner of this collection, aside from having the usual suspects of a cool JDM collection, which you will see later, he also has two JDM race cars. Race cars in Singapore? What's that all about? Let's go check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my friend Johnny's JDM collection. And right off the bat, you see two JDM legends, a Skyline GTR R32 and a Honda NSX. Now, all of these cars are in mint condition and pretty low mileage. So let's take a look at them in detail, one by one. We have a 1989 Skyline GTR R32, flawless paint, beautiful Nismo wheels. This car is imported from Japan, as you can tell with the number plate. It's on the classic plate. I think Johnny imported about 3 years ago, and this is very, very low mileage, about 20,000 kilometers. So this is something I'm looking forward to try one day. Now moving over here, we have a 1990 Honda NSX manual, and again in flawless paint, very nice work wheels. And you'll recall that I filmed a very mint Acura NSX in Hong Kong a long time ago. Now the interior of this one is really a contender with that one to be one of the nicest interior of an NSX I've ever seen. Extremely mint, again imported from Japan, and this one is not yet registered. It will be registered later this year when it's properly 35 years old. But one of the things with Johnny is he prides himself in finding some of the most mint and some of the lowest mileage JDM cars. So this one is also just about 28,000 kilometers, but these are imported from Japan. So strictly speaking, it's relatively easier to find mint and lower mileage cars. Now, of course, they cost you quite a penny, but it's relatively easier to find. But what's most impressive with this collection is it also has local Singapore cars, being these two Mitsubishi. This is a Mitsubishi GTO 1992 and a 1994 3000 GT. Basically the same car, same model. But these are local Singapore cars. As we can see, they use the local registered black plates. We call it black plates. And that, to me, is a lot more impressive because local cars here on average, they use about 20,000 kilometers per year, so even higher than Hong Kong because a lot of them drive to Malaysia and whatnot. So when I first arrived, one of my shock was how high mileage cars local Singapore cars are. And these two are also very low mileage. We're talking about below 40,000 kilometers. Local cars since day one, 92 and 94, to be in such low mileage and in such condition, pretty amazing. Now, a bit about the Mitsubishi GTO/3000 GT. It's actually quite impressive in its own right, for it has pretty high-tech technology for the time. So again, this is a 1992 car, but we're talking about original active aeros, where over 80 kilometers per hour, the rear wing and the front spoiler would have move in different angles for better aerodynamics. It has four-wheel steering, etc. So definitely a modern classic. Now, these two are not the same cars per se, I mean obviously different years, but this one is the MR version, which is the lightweight version of the Mitsubishi 3000 GT, so it actually does not have the technology of the one I talked about here just now in order for lightweightness. Now this one is a special one and quite a limited one, imported from Japan. This is a Nissan Silvia all-tech version, being the convertible version. So Alltech is a tuning company and they do these convertible conversions for the Nissan Silvia. This is a very, very rare car. Alltech only made 603 of these convertible Silvias, and I'm quite sure this is the only one in Singapore. Then finally, before we get to the race cars, moving here to the final one, it's a Nissan 300 ZX, another black plate car, very mint condition, low mileage, and just looks very, very nice. I mean, these are pretty rare around the world these days. I mean, Hong Kong, you don't see that many anyway, even more so for Singapore, so it's very cool to see one in such nice condition. Now next, we finally get to the gem of the collection, which are two JDM race cars, being this 2004 Evo 8 MR-RS, one of 110 ever made, and a 2021 GR Yaris. Now, what race cars are these? Are these rally race cars? No, these are actually auto gymkhana race cars. Now, what is auto gymkhana? Auto gymkhana is a type of racing where it takes place in a relatively smaller place, so it's not a racetrack, but it could be a field, it could be a car park, and you have to get from point A to point B in the quickest time possible. But between point A and point B, there are a number of very technical and challenging obstacles, such as tight turns, 360 drift. So it's quite a popular type of race in Southeast Asia. And Johnny has been racing in auto gymkhana races since the 90s. And this is his pride and joy. This car had won Johnny many auto gymkhana races before around Southeast Asia. And in fact, this car helped Johnny win in 2005 the SMSA championship to super grade status. Now, what that means is, aside from auto gymkhana, there are also other different type of races, also in car parks and whatnot, like a sprint race. You have to win all those different disciplines in that year in order to win the champion and get super great status. There are only a handful of people who ever did that in Singapore, and Johnny is definitely one of them with this 2004 Evo 8 MRRS. Now, this car is all decked out, all race interior. There's no aircon. It uses plexiglass, which can't open, so they have to have this functioning air scoop on the roof. Engine is all decked out, proper race car. And then this is Johnny's relatively new toy 2021 GR Yaris, which he bought not long ago and just finished prepping not long ago. He had done some races in this, but not as much as this one. And we look forward to seeing Johnny on the Gymkhana courses in the future races with the Yaris. So this is Johnny's JDM collection, and as much as I want to dive into deep detail on each and every one of them, I don't have time for one episode. But the good news is Johnny did promise me I can come back and review one by one of these cars in a later time. But today, I do want to focus on one particular car to do a review with, and ironically, it's not a JDM. In fact, it's Johnny's only non-JDM classic toy, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Singapore's meanest and baddest Mercedes Benz, which is this 1983 500 SEC AMG. Now, some of you may recall from my earlier episodes that I'm a huge Mercedes SEC fan. In fact, 10-15 years ago, I actually had both a 500 and 560 SEC at the same time, and they're just great cars. This being an AMG version is just the icing on the cake. Now, some of you may already know that the SEC is actually the two-door coupe version of the W126 S-Class. While Mercedes had a very successful SL model, the market was starting to transition to bigger, more luxurious Grand Tours, and Mercedes was missing this flagship model in its then lineup. So it decided to do a two-door version of the 126 S-Class, which became this beautiful SEC. It was actually called SEC because at the time, Mercedes actually had a new fuel injection system for their engines. So SEC actually means in German, Sonderklasse Einrichtmotor Coupe. So I'm probably butchered that in German, but in English it translates to a superclass injection engine coupe. So hence we have the SEC. Now, speaking of the engine, SECs ever only came in V8 engines, the base model being a 380, and then with this 500, and then the top of the line 560 model. The 500, as its name suggests, has a 5-liter engine, V8 engine producing 260 horsepower. The 560 would produce 300. Now, it's not a small car, it's not light, but it weighs about 1,600 kg, which for today's standard is still relatively light. So actually, as you see later, the car is actually quite powerful, even with just 260 horsepower. Like all the Mercedes models, this is a relatively mass-produced model. So just for the 500 model alone, they produce 30,000 units. They also produce about the same amount for the 560. But many years have passed. A lot of these cars have been scrapped, have crashed, or have rusted away. So finding one in this condition, in this great condition, as you'll see later, with the AMG kit and the AMG wheels is just a very, very rare opportunity. So I'm very grateful that we'll get to review it today, and let's get in and see how it drives. Right, so it's time for the test drive. It's a rainy day today. It has been raining non-stop in Singapore this month. But it's okay. I mean, it's not a fast car, and tests its limits in handling and whatnot. So it's fine. It's good to be back in an SEC after what must be really 15 years. So fuel injected engine, very, very easy to start. But one interesting thing is, some of you old enough will remember this. This era of the Mercedes has this seatbelt extension. So then you don't have to go back, twist your back to get the seatbelt. But I mean, it is a little fragile, so it's always good to be a little careful. So let's start the V8. Oh, fires up immediately. Now, it's no Ferrari, so of course it wouldn't have a roar, but nevertheless, later you hear it does, it's a pretty good sounding car. Mercedes of that day, all nice leather, really roomy cabin, really good exterior view, big windows. So it's just a comfortable place to be in. So yeah, let's head out. And the automatic gearbox is what I'm used to with the 140. Handbrake, this is an old style handbrake where you actually it's pulled out now, so the handbrake is on. To get it off, you pull it back, pull out all the way, and then push it in. Yep, there we go. I forgot how to use it. It's been a while now. One interesting thing is, one stock does everything in this SEC. It's the indicator, so it's on the right, not on your conventional left for European cars. So we do the indicators on my right, but at the same time, this stock also serves as the windscreen wiper. So I twist it, and then the windscreen wiper turns on. Now, the immediate impression is the brakes and gas pedal of this car is actually softer than most 80s, 90s Mercedes that I have driven before. And certainly my old SECs. It's really soft brake pedal, which is quite out of character for 80s and 90s Mercedes. Similarly with the gas pedal, but it's good, because the old ones sometimes are a bit too heavy. So, getting the car warmed up, just a bit background. The owner, Johnny, bought this car back in, I think, 2018 or thereabouts. The car was bought from the UK, imported to Singapore. It is a 1983 500 SEC. Mercedes actually produced the SEC between 1981 to 1991, so it's a long 10-year production. In 1986, they did have a facelift. They redesigned the front lights and I think it's lights and bumper a bit, and also the rear. But this is a pre-facelift version. Generally, the facelift version does look better than the pre-facelift, which is kind of the point of facelifting a car. But this, because of the mods, the AMG mods that Johnny had done, it doesn't really matter. Like, actually, I could barely tell initially which, whether this was a facelift or pre-facelift version. Now, so speaking of the mods, when Johnny bought this car, it was an original looking 500 SEC 1983, but he bought it with a plan, with a mission to do the whole AMG mod, and mod he did. So he sourced the body kit, the most important AMG body kit, which he admitted is not original AMG. In fact, it's a reproduction by a company in Poland, which is great actually, that they reproduced this, which according to him didn't fit perfectly well. So when he first bought it, his mechanic had to do some adjustment to the body kit so that it will fit to the car, and fit perfectly it did. His wheels, now those you don't have reproduction. These three-piece AMG wheels, classic AMG wheels, there is no reproduction. You have to buy original, and they are really rare. They're rarer than a rocking horse poo-poo. And Johnny found them on eBay, actually, costing a whopping 7,000 USD. 7,000 USD. So that's like 50, 60K Hong Kong dollars. It was already all refurbed when he bought it, but he did have to, risk paying upfront first and then pray that the seller would ship it out, which they did. So once all the parts got to Singapore, Johnny had his fitters fit everything, did a remarkable paint job. The original color of this car was white, but it did a remarkable paint job. It was raining today, but in the meadow, when I saw it when it was dry, the paint is really, really good. So it's in this perfect black color and color-coded grille and whatnot. Now, going for the drive. Now we've done it, the car's warmed up now. So it is a comfortable Grand Tour, as you expect, from the 80s. So things are a little bit heavier than Grand Tours or luxurious cars of today. Heavier steering, but better, more accurate steering. Even though I said the pedals are softer than what I'm used to, it's still relative. It is still an 80s Mercedes, so it's not your light featherweight pedals that you have in today's cars, today's Bentleys or Mercedes or whatever. Power, as mentioned, 260 horsepower. It's not a light car, but light enough. So it's not a car where you look for explosive power delivery. That's not the case. This is a cruiser. So when you step on it, it's not going to be like bang. So I'm stepping on it now. The power comes gradually, but once you pass 2,500 RPM, then you feel an ample amount of power really pushing the car through, making this a good highway cruiser, which is what it's made for. Having said that, now today we're in this sort of semi-private complex, so there's not a lot of roads, and Singapore in general, it don't have much twisties type of roads like Hong Kong. But I remember clearly when I had mine, the 500 and 560 SEC back then, they handled very, very well. They handled very, very well. The times that I brought it to Shack O, the car really surprised me. I expected the car to handle like a boat, but no, it really handled itself well. Of course, it's not an Evo or GTR, you're not going to do any time attacks, but it's actually very solid. The suspension is really stable. So the SEC always struck me as a remarkably handling car. It handles remarkably well. Now I have a really short stint of straight here. I'm going to do it pedal to metal to give you a feel and hear how the car sounds. Again, only really wakes up after 2,500 RPM, and then really goes, and you hear the V8 roar. So again, not explosive, but really competent and ample. And the 80s, this is more than enough. This is more than enough for an everyday cruiser that you can use. In conclusion, after this short drive, again, SEC, one of my favorite marques, and I'm not the only one. It is one of the most iconic Mercedes models ever produced. To me, it's really the one truly remarkable two-door S-Class ever made, and I'll always be a fan. So I'm very grateful to Johnny for letting me try out Singapore's meanest and baddest Mercedes. And if you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed this car, please give us a like, please subscribe, please remember to click the bell button next to the subscribe button so we know when our next video is. Thank you and have a good day.